Welcome back. Is MultiChoice technically bust? It would appear so, with 1.1 billion rand of negative equity after a horror reporting period. So can Canal Plus come back and save its bacon already and deal with the currency issues that have plagued it? Here's CEO Tim Jacobs.
We try as far as possible to limit the impact on consumers. We try not. So, for example, when the currencies are really going, ballistic, like we've seen in this past year, at a trading profit level. In the last 5 years, our business from listing to 2023 incurred a cumulative 4.3 billion foreign exchange loss. We've just incurred a 4.5 billion rand exchange loss in a single year. Now, obviously, in those contexts, you're not going to go to the customer and say, well, I'm going to try and recover, the cost of currency movement.
Sorry, CFO Tim Jacobs. Just to start off with, on Wednesday night, we had Shane Watkins and Wayne McCurry on Stockwatch. And Wayne said they've kitchen sinked this business, it's impairments up the wazoo, and that's led to this technical insolvency. Shane said, I disagree with you. This business is in a terrible state and it's being terribly managed. Where do you stand?
Well, if they've lost 8.8 billion by that gentleman's math over the last 5 years on currency, they don't have a business model. I mean, if you've lost 8.8 billion on currency fluctuations and you can't pass it on to the consumer, where is your business model? I mean, I do think that Wayne is right; they've wazooed it, but they don't have a business.
That's why I was so much in favour of Canal Plus.
Yeah, $125. Take it.
I'm a big believer in fat companies. In other words, being owned by a fat company. That's why I'm saying with Anglos, you missed the opportunity.
But also, because 8.8 billion in euros is like a good lunch for the French.
That's why you want businesses who can get through the rough times and can finance difficult times as well. I'm not saying that the fat companies have made it illegally. They've made it properly. And Canal Plus is a good company with big balance sheets and lots of money. MultiChoice was never like that. They should have...
They should have not been spun out of Naspers.
No.
You could say that.
Yeah.
Because they had the big brother.
Yeah. To a large extent. So I'm a big favourite of fat companies, big companies, strong companies. And don't let the competition commissions and various bodies interfere with that. This is a global issue. It's not a local issue. And I'm very much in favour of this going through and just capitulating and handing over and letting them run it, regardless of what the laws are about media companies, who owns it, etc. This is survival.
Yeah, well, and in this case, 8.8 billion, staggering. Spar, meanwhile, had the best day on the JSE in months, nay years. It's ditching the Polish millstone, kicking the SAP backside and reveling in bumper growth. Okay, 2 out of 3 is good enough.
So sales up 7.9%, I think buoyed by our foreign businesses and a weakening in the rand in the period. Having said that, our Irish business unit growing nicely at 7% in local currency. Our South African business growing just shy of 5%. Having said that, really strong growth for our retailers. Our retailers growing upward of 7% in SA, which indicates a gain in market share. So we're really pleased about that.
The gain in market share, I mean, maybe they're just reclaiming some of the vast amount of market share they've lost over the last couple of years. Volumes were down. I mean, we can see it. Growth is here, but inflation is high. But to be fair, we see that all the food retailers.
There's something about South African companies. We're so arrogant. We really think we're such good operators. We can take on the world. And what happens is everybody goes out and takes on the world and ends up coming back, with a tail between their legs. Here's another one that's gone. They're not doing brilliantly in the other areas. Let's go to Tiger Brands. Let's keep going to our businesses that have gone offshore and just destroyed capital. We can start at A and end at Z.
I remember when they did, for example, the Polish deal, and I spoke to then CEO, name escapes me, and he said, we only paid €1 for our downside is limited. Not true. I mean, it's cost them a fortune. They've got 200 million of debt on the balance sheet belonging to Poland, which the buyer may or may not take.
I'm just curious about, they didn't say they're up for sale, but they said, nothing is off the table ever with the Irish and the Swiss operations. I mean, if you look at the conversion, the currency conversion, they've grown in terms of currency. Is that not good enough?
Anybody, you could have taken $1 out and become very rich simply leaving the dollar in a bank account. I mean, that's not really what the operations were about, you know. You could have come to me, I would have taken a portfolio, put it offshore, and you would have matched them or even done better than them. So I don't think that's really the comparison, is that operationally they failed. And how many businesses? You know, it's just one after the other.
The easier list is who has succeeded going offshore. There's one or two. Supergroup bought that Australian operation that did well. Bidcorp.
Bidcorp did it with pain. You know, if you go to the history, it wasn't straight sailing. You know, it wasn't easy sailing. It was difficult.
But we've also run out of names after
SAB
too.
Miller? Well, before
SAB Miller did okay.
Yes.
They were clever in they were probably one of the Old Mutual, even Discovery. You know, all of these companies, Vestact, keep going. You know, we can go to all the operators. The construction company, they led the way. They set the benchmark, you know.
For awful.
For awful, you know. How to lose money quick, yeah. Anyway.
Can I just one question? SAP. Why do South African retailers implement SAP systems and it every time seems to blow up in their play? I don't understand. They spend so much money. It sort of seems to destroy the business. And then I couldn't quite understand if Spar has actually now decided to
so they're keeping
SAP
bits of it, but in the warehousing, which I would imagine is the majority of it, they're ditching it. So basically they're saying, you know what, delete it all, but keep that little crust over there. I agree, SAP. How does that company even exist?
Haven't they got a golf course down in...
Yeah, I think so. Well, Mr. Price is feeling pretty buoyant too, although as one analyst pointed out, the revenues it's acquired from a deal-making frenzy aren't exactly producing profit at great margins. Thank goodness then for SARS's Shane crackdown. Which is good news for them. They're now finally going to implement import duties on Shane and Temu.
On everyone, 45%.
I never know how to pronounce
Shane
it.
and Temu. Shane. I don't know.
Temu.
Either way,
you know what you must look at? We're a company, when you look at the revenue, okay, and it's up 16%, and then you look at EBITDA or operating profits only 7 or 8, hold on a sec.
That's sort of
something's
that's the
gone
other way around.
wrong. Yeah, that's because when your sales are up, you know, you should get operational gearing. In other words, you should make more money, recovery of fixed costs, etc. So always look at that, investigate it. If sales were genuinely up like that, why is the operating profit down?
But so I've got to, and to the point, and I saw the tweet that says that they're not extracting the same level of value. Is the argument not, particularly with something as big as Studio 88, that they simply haven't got those efficiencies? And I know that we bought it for synergies is usually hogwash, but just sort of, you know, warehousing, distribution, getting all that in place is going to take a little bit of time.
That's why.
And that will start to come through.
They're a good operation. I'm not knocking them. I think they got hurt on the early onset or late onset of winter again. You know.
And stuff.
Boy,
but so fun fact.
Lots of those fun fur coats again.
They also went to Nigeria. I'd forgotten.
Of course, don't you remember?
2011 to 21. I'd completely forgotten about that misadventure.
ShopRite?
Everyone.
Everyone tried their luck.
It's Nigerians. It's like we see South Africans in our future.
I do feel for them on the winter though. I mean, May at least in Johannesburg was the warmest. It was outlandishly warm.
No,
there is no inclination to go and buy oneself a fairy puffer jacket.
Yeah, but then there was last week, so we all made up for it last week because
you've got to do what Zara does. You know, they've got the best model. You don't buy ahead. You know, you just produce for what's happening there at the moment. You know, anyway.
There have been precious few wins from the Brait stable of late, but maybe Premier Foods is a little winner after all.
Our major focus at the moment is in the bakery operations that service more the southern parts of Gauteng from the Johannesburg market south into the Vaal Triangle and into the Free State markets. That's the one area that even with all the money that we've spent in the last 10 years, sort of like our last area that we need to make the investment in. So we shut down our Ayrton bakery in the south of Johannesburg last year, end of July, and we're busy rebuilding at a total cost of 700 million rand.
Not bad numbers, not a company I can get very excited about, but they've spent a lot on capex in the last, many years, and it's bearing some fruit.
Look, Premier was always a top company, but they were bread makers. Like Tiger Brands are still a bread maker. You know, we forget, we think they're fast-moving consumer goods, but they're bread makers.
Well, they've got some.
They've got other things.
Some hygiene product in there and some.
Yeah, but have a look at the composition of you know, it's bread. And what is bread? It's when you buy the wheat, and it's a commodity type company and that. But there was always a standoff between the Frankel family and the Bloom and the, who were the other ones? Jaffe families, You know, they always fought for dominance, But still, it's good to see Premier still making bread,
Yeah, and making it at profits too. And then there was Omnia, which can thank its lucky stars for its mining division.
Our mining business has had exceptional growth in the current period. You know, that business shows profits just under R1 billion, which is an incredible performance. And that growth has been driven from a few factors. I think firstly, we saw growth in our mining chemicals business. We also saw growth in our third-party ammonia derivative sales locally. But then the investments we made in Canada, Indonesia, and in West Africa is also starting to bear fruit.
Remember that rights issue in 2019? 2 billion ZAR. By my calculation, you got shares at 20, they now call it 60, and that 2 billion, they've returned about 3 billion in special dividends and share buybacks.
No, it's a good business.
Kudos to the team.
Yeah. No, I've always liked Omnia. You know, it's AECI. Sorry, it's a very similar, two similar businesses, but it can be very volatile, you know, because
they say they've smoothed that out. I mean, we'll see in time.
We'll see, but the mining side, you know, they've got good areas. It's just that sometimes in commodity type businesses, it can be very difficult to read.
Yeah. And also, the chemicals business, for example, like, the plunge in profits there was extreme. So, you know, it is quite volatile.
We got a lot of those companies, you know, the chickens, the fish, the miners.
Hey, the fish made money.
That's why just stick to AI. Just stick to AI. Everybody's buying AI.
And finally, who needs intergalactic missiles when you can just float bags of rubbish to your despised neighbor and laugh as they burst? That's presumably is North Korea's great win. A little lighter amusement at its neighbor's expense after the rogue state sent more than 300 waste-loaded balloons across the border this week in response to what it calls propaganda loudspeaker broadcasts. Luckily, the bags contained only bits of paper and not the unmentionables you could imagine, although some of them earlier apparently had. This is when you got no money left. You can't afford weapons and bullets, just bags of rubbish.
Isn't this Trump's friend?
Yes.
It's Trump's friend, yes.
Says it all. Anyway, well, that's where we leave it. David, thanks for joining us solo this week. That was the week that was. Have a good evening and a great weekend.